mental health and SEL, that's definitely, those are areas that I'm very passionate about. And the Lead with Hope system, that was really born out of my own personal tragedy and trauma. And you're talking a little bit about ADHD. You know, as a child, you grew up and you might have had that undiagnosed. You said, I'm wondering, with the kids that you see, the kids, the adolescents, your population, I'm wondering how many of those kids deal with trauma in addition to, or maybe they don't have a mental health diagnosis. Maybe it is just trauma, but I feel like trauma just masks so many other issues that our kids face. But in your experience, how many kids do you see on a weekly basis who are dealing with trauma?
A lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
I did as a principal, I do as a therapist. I don't know when and if they're going to update some of the ACE data, the adverse childhood experience stuff. But from pre-pandemic, the agreed upon thing was that about 2/3 of us faced at least one ACE, at least one adverse childhood experience,
Mm-hmm.
and that 1 in 8 of us had at least 4 of them, 4 or more. So
Mm-hmm.
when you factor that in, that doesn't include any mental health stuff, doesn't include living through a hopefully once in at least 100-year pandemic. That there's another statistic that half of adolescents would qualify for a mental health diagnosis. You take the half, the 2/3, you take the pandemic, you take everything that's going on. That's everybody.
Yeah.
Like everybody's facing something, and whether it's everyone's trauma can be different, everyone's mental health can be different. Everybody has anxiety. We do. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably a good survival thing that we have that in a little bit, but when it becomes moderate to extreme and it starts preventing us from doing things that we normally would like to do, that's where it becomes a problem. So so often, I'm working on what's the barrier, what's the obstacle, what are some things that we can try, how can we challenge some of our own negative thinking, how can we put a plan in place for success. And almost it's a universal thing because I have the DSM-5 right literally in arm's reach over here.
Mm-hmm.
There's no Bryan page in there, there's
Right.
no Brandy page. If they say, okay buddy, you got 12% of your issue is anxiety, 18 is your ADHD, and 24 is your trauma history. Okay, that's fantastic. Like, what do I do with that?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing on my forehead, a billboard that reads, right now I'm acting this way because I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I've been re-traumatized. So I guess the long answer is to really look for universal strategies that just help us learn to kind of keep that window of tolerance open,
Mm-hmm.
try and keep us from turning from Bruce Banner into the Incredible Hulk, to keep that communication, to learn ways to calm down. And in working with clients, I really focus on 3 things. If we have an undesirable behavior, looking at how do we reduce the frequency, so how often it happens, how do we reduce the magnitude, how big it gets, and how do we reduce the duration. If we can reduce any parts of those or all of those, that's a success. So
Mm-hmm.
really looking at it through that lens, and in other ways, having clients report, self-report back what their mood rating has been every day, reflect at the end of the day. So we find out that Brandy, on Tuesdays, you always seem to be like, 0's the worst day you ever had, 5's average, 10's the greatest day ever. Why are Tuesdays a 4, Brandy? And what about Thursdays make it a 9, so we can kind of capitalize on what we're doing here and try to mitigate the things that are going on and at least just help with that awareness. So there's a
Yeah.
lot going on here and they're not mutually
Yeah.
exclusive. They could have 5 diagnoses. It's still, at the end of the day, it's still Bryan or what, Brandy or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.